It's
So,
the ward cost. Ward plow mom. Nope.
yep, exactly. Okay, moving on. Tell me your first pick, John. Okay, you know that you're playing all the staples in your mono white decks, but what about the cards that you're not playing that you should be playing in your mono white decks? That is what today's episode of the MTG Thoughtcast is all about. I'm your host, Joseph Rubino, your co-host at least, and across the screen or across your ears is my sweet, sweet brother, John Kendall. John, how are you, brother?
Hello. I'm atop the command tower tapping it for mono white.
Oh, just tapping it, dude.
All the way down.
I love that. Well, yeah, today
Hello.
we're talking all things mono white. You ready to get into it, John?
Couple of white dudes talking about mono white.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
To be clear, we started this for WUBRG order, not because white's the best color. Okay, let's clear the air a little bit.
Hey, no, listen. I would argue that white is very strong, but that's getting into the actual topic of the episode.
Absolutely. And before that, we have a little bit of upkeeping that we always have to do to promote the channel. Guys, if you like this kind of content, you want to see or hear these faces and voices, respectively, in your feeds and timelines more often, super easy and free ways to do that. If you scroll down just a little bit, there's some likes, comments, and subscribe buttons. Thank you to all of you who already do all of that. Means the world to us. Love seeing all the comments. Love seeing all the subscribes and shares and all of that. If you want to be a part of that, making the two of us smile a little brighter, just hit all those buttons down there. It's great. If you are listening on Spotify, you can give us a 5-star review. It's so easy to do. And those mean more than anything that I've just said. That changes the game. So you can leave 5-star reviews on Spotify. And then if you want to be an ultra platinum mythic pull podcast listener, you can join our Discord, which is linked down below. There's just a link there. We play spell table games. We talk all things magic. We brew decks. It's a great time. So go ahead and jump down there, and then you'll be in the know on all of the things Thoughtcast. Okay, time for today's episode. John,
You got it. Take a breath.
Missed.
You good?
Yeah. I need to take a sip of water. You tell them what the episode's going to be about.
He always runs out of gas when it comes to talking about the upkeep step. And now we are in the main phase. You see how we're coordinating this or trying.
It's a magic podcast. We're using magic terms. It's relatable.
Baby. So I came up with this idea, and I'm sure it's definitely not original or anything like that. But, you know, what else are you supposed to do when it comes to talking about topics on a podcast? Well, we give our opinions and our ideas that we want to share with you. And we are going to get started into a new sort of like sub-series here on the podcast. And it's just going to be basically about our top favorites that we play in certain colors of decks. I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. That you may not be playing in your decks. And this is obviously very broad and subjective, right? Because there's thousands of Magic cards to play in your decks.
Yeah, but our opinions are correct.
Yeah.
That's how this works.
Right. Everybody has a niche pet card. Everybody has a particular favorite that they like to play in certain strategies. And we're now just going to go ahead and get started talking about ours that we enjoy.
2025 is the year of color episodes.
You got it. And our goal with this especially is going to be not just like doing a rando Scryfall search of like, ooh, what's in the 1% of commander decks. This is like, we tried to like grab things that we are playing currently right now, at least, or at the very least, something that we personally have played before in decks. Maybe not necessarily play anymore, but especially like my goal, at least anyway, and Joseph, I assume you did the same thing, is we tried to pull from cards that we are playing right now.
Yeah, I think to kind of summarize what these episodes are going to be about is if you've seen any of our Cards You Missed episodes where we talk about some underrated, which I know those episodes are more about commons and uncommons, but we talk about underrated cards in sets. And this is like underrated cards in a color or a color pairing. So, starting with the color white, these are cards that I've pulled from my decks that every time I play them, I'm like, man, this is giving me way more value than it's getting credit for. And I'm really stoked to talk about some of these. Well, I'll just take us away with my first card to talk about if I'm playing a white deck. So if I'm sitting down and I'm brewing a white deck, which I've been known to do, I've even brewed quite a few mono white decks. But if I'm sitting down and playing white, the first card that I'm putting in after the staples, we're not going to talk about staples today. We're not going to, you don't need me to tell you that Smothering Tithe is a good card. You don't need me to tell you that Teferi's Protection is a good card, okay? You're playing those cards already. What are you doing after the staples? And for me, it is Mother of Runes. There is practically zero scenario where I'm not putting Mother of Runes into a deck. And I think that everybody should be doing the same. She should be included in like staples of white.
Yeah, 100% agree. The ability is so almost unique and very hard to deal with, and especially dropping super, super early.
Oh my god.
There's
one of my favorite sort of cycles of cards or genres of cards is one drops that need to be answered, otherwise you win the game. And Mother of Runes is absolutely that. So she is the first thing that I do if I need a commander to be protected. Like if I'm playing a deck that cares about the commander and I'm playing white, Mother of Runes absolutely in there. Honorable mention is Skrelv Deflector Might as well. That's sort of my like, if I want a Mother of Runes, I probably want Skrelv as well. I'm actually not a huge fan of Giver of Runes. It just feels too close to Mother of Runes. Skrelv feels like a little thumbprint of mine to put in a deck. But Mother of Runes specifically, if you don't know what it is, Mother of Runes is a single white mana for a 1/1 cleric. She maybe is eroded to a human cleric at this point, but maybe
human
she's just
cleric. That is correct.
Human cleric, got it. None of the copies that I have say that. So Mother of Runes is a cleric, human cleric now, that has an ability of tap and target creature you control gains protection from a color of your choice until the end of turn. That can include itself. So what Mother of Runes does is it's like multifaceted. She is a Swiss Army knife of a card. She can protect one of your creatures from a single targeted removal spell. She can protect one of your creatures from a damage-based board wipe, like Blasphemous Act or something like that. She can pro-red protect from that. She can make a creature of yours unblockable if somebody only has one color of creatures on board. She can make one of your creatures able to just fog a creature that's attacking you. The list goes on, and I've never played Mother of Runes and had it not be relevant. So I would say if we're starting the episode talking about white cards that should be played more often, it's got to start with Mother of Runes for me.
Easy.
Oh,
excellent.
Also, all of that can be targeted at herself as well. So like, you have a piece of removal for something, you have to target Mother of Runes to burn that removal spell first, and then have another removal spell in hand to take care of the thing you were trying to get rid of. And in that scenario, Mother of Runes still survives all of that. So,
it's the ward cost, ward, plow, mom. Nope.
Yep, exactly. Okay, moving on. Tell me your first pick, John.
Oh man, I've also conveniently for my first pick of cards here is also a white 1-drop, and it's my favorite. You should know exactly how this went. You were sitting
dirty,
next
John.
to
You're dirty.
I'm referencing we recently did a Mystery Booster 2 draft when I went to visit him a little while ago.
Shout out homies.
Our homies, our Mystery Booster friends. Let's go.
Shout out Chaos Bowl.
And I drafted myself into mono white oops all attacks, and that was basically lich pinned against one of my earliest picks that I did, and a personal favorite card of mine that I have shared on here before. More people need to be playing. It's Authority of the Consoles.
Absolutely.
It's dumb.
God, it just wins games, dude.
It wins games by itself. Authority of the Consoles is a single white mana enchantment. Creatures your opponents control enter tapped, and when a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life.
That does too much for a 1-drop. There's too much text on that.
Single 1-drop. You've now negated all instances of haste on any creatures. Single 1-drop, you are now anti-blink, right? If your opponent is doing some blink shenanigans, oops, all of their things that they thought that they might have as blockers are now coming in tapped and regaining you life.
Oh, dude, I'm thinking about this against my, like, hallowed Nahiri's Resolve decks. That like this brings all those creatures back on the upkeep, and then they come in tap.
It's just if it works twofold that like you can obviously give yourself a nice life buffer as your opponents are playing creatures, and if you are playing something more aggressive, think something like Boros or Mardu or something like that, and you're trying to go fast, creatures being tapped down in your opponent's way, that's almost a whole extra turn of combat that you get to do what your deck is trying to do, while again giving you a life buffer back so that you can just keep swinging free of charge.
Absolutely.
It's just a fantastic piece to be able to help you stay alive while you set up either some aggressive or control strategies.
Absolutely. Especially on turn 1, it just means like you're going to stabilize. You're probably going to realistically be at 60 life like for the game, and then you just have this authority over your opponents. Now, for the inevitable comments, is this a stacks piece?
No.
You think it's not stacks?
No,
perhaps I do think it's stacks.
Tapping down creatures isn't stacks. Stacks is almost ubiquitously defined as something that is denying of a resource specifically.
Denial of creatures attacking, perhaps?
No, you have Authority of the Consuls does not stop your opponent from playing the creature. It does not stop the creature from untopping, and it does not stop it from attacking you later. Fair. So there is nothing in that card that reads stacks.
It's a Punisher piece, if anything. It's just punishing you for playing the game.
It is a tempo card.
Nice. Well, I'll keep us on track with 1-drops and talk about severely underrated 1-drops in any creature-based white strategy. You should be playing Reconnaissance in those decks. It's finally gotten reprinted with some reminder text that makes sense and tells you how to do the tricks with it. But Reconnaissance is a single white mana for an enchantment that has an ability that is 0 mana, which I love that. Remove target attacking creature you control from combat and untap it. So at worst, what this does is give all of your creatures vigilance. So
it's free attacks.
Yeah, let me tell you how this works, and it's explained in the Assassin's Creed printing of this, where you can activate this after damage. It only needs it to be an attacking creature, meaning in any of the combat phases, which there is an end of combat phase, or like end of combat step in the combat phase, that allows you a moment to untap them after they've dealt damage and quote unquote remove them from combat. So worst case scenario, you hit with your creatures, you activate Reconnaissance on all of them after you've attacked with them and dealt damage. They just functionally gain vigilance. The other thing that it does is it means you can get attacks triggers freely and never have to care about whether your creature is going to die or not. You can swing out every combat because you're going to either be able to untap the ones that get through or untap the ones that get blocked and keep them back to block as well. So Reconnaissance is an unbelievably tricky and like, oh, you just can't, like when Reconnaissance comes down, creatures are swinging. There is nothing you can do about it. There is no like, oh, I can play my 12/12. I can play Galta and no one's going to attack into me. Sorry, you're getting attacked into because it's just Reconnaissance. They're just going to wait until it's blocked and then untap it and get all of those sweet attack triggers off of their stuff. So if you want to be enjoying that level of trickiness, you should be playing Reconnaissance. It also kind of levels up your like magic rules knowledge to be able to go like, aha, I understand how the combat damage step works a little bit better. You've leveled yourself up by playing Reconnaissance in your decks. So just try it. Just throw it in a deck. I dare you to find a time where it's not at least somewhat useful. It's also a 1-drop, like we talked about. Like, the cost is so little. The only cost to playing this is a card in your deck. And I'd be willing to bet that Reconnaissance is better than the worst card in your white decks if you're not playing Reconnaissance. Swap it out.
Easy. Nope, I love it. I almost was going to talk about Reconnaissance myself, but I was like, maybe that one might be like borderline, like everybody knows it, but like, again, who actually bought Assassin's Creed? Nobody.
I still think it's pretty, I just don't see Reconnaissance come up in games very often, and I think it should be in way more games.
Yeah, I'm definitely that way. I've got a couple copies of Reconnaissance and several different
Dude, it
decks
also
as well.
used to be like a $13 card, and now it's $2 because it's
Dope.
finally been reprinted enough.
It's so good. It's so good.
Nice.
All
On
right.
to you.
Yep, moving
Pass
along.
turn. Pass priority.
Hey Joseph,
Yes. John.
did you know that white has a Cyclonic Rift?
No.
You didn't know that?
I'm curious where you're going with this. I feel like we might have some
Ooh.
arguments.
Well, please, let me introduce you to one of my favorite rats called Wind of Abandon.
Yep.
This is essentially white Cyclonic Rift because it basically doesn't affect you in the slightest. Winds of Abandon
I'm going to challenge you a bit on the Cyclonic Rift thing, because taking care of creatures is like base value of what Cyclonic Rift does, and Winds of Abandon only takes care of creatures. It still is super good. It's just like in Garrick's Wake for white.
suppose so, but okay, let me get to the card. And it was more the comparison about like what it does at face value, and then when
It
you
was
overload
clickbait.
it,
I see what
suppose.
you're doing here.
Ah.
You got me.
Winds of Abandon is 1 and a white for a sorcery. You exile target creature you don't control. For each creature exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card. Those players put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And it has Overload for 4 and double white mana. Overload means that if you cast it for the overload cost, you change the text in the spell that replaces all instances of target with each. So if you do this for its overload cost, instead of exiling a target creature, this will now exile each creature you don't control. And every single one of those creatures turns into a basic land for your opponent.
Which, like, you're not going to get a basic land for every single one of them. You're going to fetch the rest of the basic lands out of your deck, which might be 2 more.
Call me super old-fashioned, but I am still, and you know what? Winds of Abandon can probably also be interchanged for me. How about this as one of my honorable mentions? Winds of Abandon is my actual choice. Settle the Wreckage will be my honorable mention in this slot as well.
Fair.
For identical purposes of you just will catch somebody off guard. Creature exile is huge against
It's such a gotcha card.
Yeah, no matter what kind of deck someone is playing, like even if they're not a graveyard focused deck, chances are just the way that how we build decks nowadays with staples and repeated pieces of things to be able for recursion, right? Every deck needs some means of being able to pull something back out of the graveyard, usually. And so this will have...
I hadn't even thought about that. This exiles it.
This will have...
It's better than a board wipe.
This will have a heavy influence against no matter what you're playing. And one of my biggest things that I always love talking about when it comes to deck building is your cards being flexible. And so just like a Cyclonic Rift that you will never really ever see be a single target, Winds of Abandon, when you need it to be super early in the game, can hit a really dangerous creature
100%.
early. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having that functionality of either being a single target or getting everything you don't control is ridiculous. It's why Vandal Blast is so good. It's exactly why Vandal Blast is so good. Of like, oh, early game someone has a Soul Ring, I'm going to target that thing. Late game, I'm going to overload this and get all of the artifacts. This is exactly the same, but with creatures. Of like, oh, early game, you're playing your Grease Fang and you're about to reanimate your Parhelion 2 to hand. I'm going to exile that and stall you for 2 turns. And late game, it's just, it's in Garrick's. Late game is just 6 mana. I probably win the game here.
There is obviously a reasonable cost to like giving a bunch of lands to your opponents, but like you just said, into the very late game,
No one's playing basics.
If somebody has a decent enough board, like they may run out of basics at some point going for the search like this. I personally, I've played games with this where Winds of Abandon was going to resolve on its overload cost, and everyone is just conceding.
Oh, totally. Dude, this is how you really tilt the proxy players, where like they've proxied full like ABUR duels and everything, and you're like, I don't know, go fetch your basics, dude, and they've got 2 in their deck.
Exactly. Yep.
This is how you show it to the proxy players.
And I just like the last little bit that I really do like about this is that unlike other really big mass exile spells like Farewell, this one does not affect you. So
yeah, it's crazy good.
You can sit there, dirtle up your board of attackers, wait for everybody else to start putting up their defenses, Winds of
Well,
Abandon.
it's a way to play a board wipe in a creature deck. Where like when I played Delny, I didn't want to play any board wipes that affected my board. So you're stuck with things like Dusk Dawn. This is just another version of something like that, where it's except you don't have restrictions on it. It's just get all creatures you don't control. It's just 2 extra mana for a Wrath of God that does not affect you. Or, you know, it's Path to Exile for every creature. But it functionally takes that place where it's like you can play your creature deck and still play a board wipe. You get to have your cake and eat it too. And it's targeted removal. It fills so many roles.
Yep.
Excellent pick, John.
Yep. Mine
I personally am playing it in no decks. So this episode is for me.
I'm playing it in my Sir Gwen deck, where it's just like, I want to make it night, make it super big, boom, get all those blockers out of the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Well, let's have a little choose your adventure for my next one. Do you want to talk about a creature, or do you want to talk about another 1-drop that's got a lot of text on it?
Ooh, hit me with another 1-drop that's filled with text.
Let's talk about Surge of Salvation, shall we? This is
boy.
This is the hill I will die on, is that Surge of Salvation is cracked. Surge of Salvation is a single white mana for an instant that says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. Cracked, dude. For a single mana, it functions in the same place that you would put like a Tamiyo's Safekeeping. Let's say that. Obviously, it doesn't give indestructible, so don't come after me. Just track with me here. So in the place of target creature you control gains hexproof and protection from black and red. Ooh, that's not really what it says, but it's pretty close to it. It instead says you and all permanents you control gain all of that for a single white mana. So it just locks down hexproof for everything until end of turn, bare minimum, and yourself. Somebody plays an Emrakul or a Mindslaver or something that's trying to target you with something, Surge of Salvation, no thanks. Somebody is playing a mono red deck and is attacking you. I play mono red decks that deal a lot of damage to face. This says prevent all damage from those sources to creatures you control. So like Blasphemous Act, countered. It is indestructible for Blasphemous Act. I don't think that there's many black damage board wipes. If you're playing those, you probably should be playing better board wipes. But I've just, every time that I've had a Surge of Salvation in hand, I've just breathed a little bit easier, knowing that at the very least, I'm going to protect something, and at most, I'm going to completely blow somebody out, and it's going to act like it's a fairy's protection for a single white mana. It's just so easy to hold it up, and like, it's almost always relevant. There's almost always something that you're going to be blanking from it. It's a fog. If somebody's playing a Rakdos deck, and they're like attacking you with a bunch of stuff, you're just like, Surge of Salvation, block all of your stuff. My stuff doesn't die, yours does. See ya. Oh, it's so good. The like top end of this is so high, and the floor is really high as well on this. So when I'm building a white deck, I try to put Surge of Salvation into it, and then like very rarely find myself cutting it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's an incredible piece for being able to blank tons of removal. And when you're not an idiot brain like me who knows how to read the card, it works great in every.
Did you think it gave indestructible?
I have a clip on our channel of John ramming a surged creature right into a Phyrexian
Obliterator. Yeah. You're like, this is fine. It prevents damage. That's all I need to care about.
Prevented the damage.
That's really funny.
Entire board.
Can you just clip that in right here?
There it is. You just watched it. Oh, it was so dumb. I didn't know how to read a card, but
and you know what?
Okay.
Even in a case where it wasn't helpful for you, great story.
It was a fantastic story.
And that's what we're here for.
Oh man.
Take me away with your next card, John. Sweep me off of my feet here.
Excellent. I don't think I'll be sweeping you off your feet, but I'll definitely be sending you over to my opponent to the left.
Okay. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Well, that means one of my favorite screw over combat enchantments other than Authority of the Consuls. What a troll.
Guys, I'm sorry about him. I'm sorry.
I love this kind of stuff.
John, when you're playing Authority of the Consuls and Mystic Barrier.
Mystic Barrier. I love this little card.
All right, sell me on this thing, John.
All right, here we go. Mystic Barrier for 4 and a white. It's an enchantment. When Mystic Barrier enters, or at the beginning of your upkeep, choose left or right.
Let's pause there. Stupid. Go ahead.
Each player may attack only the opponent seated nearest him or her in the last chosen direction, and planeswalkers controlled by that player. So how Mystic Barrier works is that this comes down into play, and you look to either who's next to you in turn order and who just went before you as well. And whichever direction you would like combat to go, you just choose that direction. And this obviously affects you as well, but the biggest play to a card like this is you look at whoever is doing the strongest combat-related thing that you don't want coming back at you, and just be like, hey, player B, you now have to go after player C exclusively.
Yes.
You know, no combats at me, no combats over there. And this is a do nothing enchantment. Obviously, I know that. But like the other compounding pieces that you could start piling up on top of this to just like super discourage attacking you, right? Like you could already be playing stuff like Ghostly Prison down right before this. So now the chosen player who only has to attack you, like they're taxed as well. So you might just never be attacked again for the rest of the combat.
Truly.
You can also bypass your own combat-related restrictions by playing stuff like Myriad, because all this stops is the declare
Choosing
attacks.
to attack.
Correct. So you declare your attack at the person that you have chosen, and then your Myriad tokens are free to go at everybody else. So
very cool.
You've hosed down combat for everybody else, but you can keep doing your stupid stuff if you really want to.
I dig it. That's very cool. You've sold me on this.
It's a little expensive.
What I once thought was really dumb, I now only think is a little bit dumb.
It's a little bit dumb. It is 5 mana to get down, and obviously does not protect itself. So, like, you know, all those dice to removal, like a lot of cards do. But
each player. Okay, so let me just clarify some rules on this. If this gets taken out in the middle of a turn cycle, the restriction goes away.
Right, yeah, everything goes away when the card does.
Got it. Because when it enters or at the beginning of your upkeep, all it's asking you to do is choose. It's like choosing cons or dragons. You're choosing left or right,
right.
And then each is going based off of that.
That's another big boon to this kind of card as well, right? You are not locked to your first choice. If it comes back around to you at your next upkeep and you're ready to switch it around a different direction, great, just choose it.
Love it. Yeah, that's super cool.
Just simply pick left or right.
It's also it's probably not annoying enough that people are going to kill it. Because like you're again back to the authority of the consoles thing. You're not stopping them from doing combat. You're not going to be like mega targeted. You're just going to go like, this person probably wants to attack them anyway, so I'm just going to choose to send them for sure that direction. Now they definitely will not be looking at my board to see what I'm doing. It's like the Wizard of Oz curtain is what Mystic Barrier is to me.
Exactly, yes. Again, another sort of like middle of the game tempo. I'm looking to set up things on my board and I need less combat coming your way.
Yes.
This, and then, like you said, this still doesn't stop everything, right? You can still take non-combat damage perfectly fine. You can still eat removal. You can still eat like discard spells and stuff like that. So like
5 mana to functionally fog 2 out of 3 of the players at the game that are against you is nice.
It's very cool. I'm a very big fan of it. I don't play this in a deck anymore, but it's always in my back burner of like,
it's one of those that's like sits in your binder and you're like, I want to put this in something.
When I'm ready for another tempo deck of some kind, tempo control or something.
Absolutely. A little Aikido action, throw a little
Mystic Barrier's going to have my back. Yep.
Nice. I'm excited about that. Well, I'm going to completely derail us from that and talk about just a good value creature for a second. Let me bring to your awareness a little man that I call Remorseful Cleric. This is 1 and a white for a 2/1 with flying. It's a spirit cleric, and it says sacrifice it to exile target player's graveyard. That's it. That's all the card does, and I love it so much. 2 mana, 2/1 flyers is just such a perfect creature. It's such a perfect card. And then like this little evasive guy that no one's going to target with anything is just all of a sudden going to hose somebody. I look at Remorseful Cleric in the same way that I do Bajukabog, which is like, For the low cost of just playing a 2-mana 2/1 with flying, I can have Graveyard Hate in the deck and be totally fine never using it. Because I hate putting Tormod's Crypt in a deck. I refuse it. I hate playing Graveyard Hate if it doesn't have extra functionality in the deck. Like, it needs to do something else for me to want to play it. And Remorseful Cleric is just like a little guy, and that's totally fine. He wears equipment really well. He wears auras super well. Like, any type of beefing, or like if you're playing a spirits deck, he obviously goes in there. Like, there's so many ways that just having this little evasive creature is going to be good value that, like, incidentally is just going to hose every other deck that I play and exile my graveyard. But I love Remorseful Cleric.
Yeah, he's really nice. I love two really big aspects about this card specifically. Number one, the activated ability to exile a target player's graveyard requires no other cost to it other than just sacrificing him. So like you said, like,
You're encouraged to continue attacking with him.
No one's going to be pointing removal at this 2-mana little guy just because it is just a dinky little 2/1 flyer. And the one off-time instance that somebody maybe would want to try to ping it down because they want their graveyard spared, sacrifice it in response to that. Yep, goodbye.
There he goes.
It's very, very hard to stop that activated ability. And then number two, that's really, really cool about this card, Remorseful Cleric does not exile himself to his ability. He's in the graveyard, ready to come right back.
I think the first time I fell in love with this card was when I was playing Alesha, Who Smiles at Death. But it was like, oh my god, the toolbox cards that you could just put in that deck of like swing with Alesha, get back my Selfless Spirit for like whatever reason. Like, and now it's just back again and I can snag somebody else's graveyard. It does, like, obviously, like, we're splitting hairs here. It targets a player's graveyard. It doesn't get rid of all players' graveyards, but like it's pretty rare that I'm like, oh man, I have to care about both of these guys' graveyards at the same time. So I'm totally fine with targeted graveyard hate that comes on a relevant body. That's totally fine to me. It's like playing the Ooze. What's the Ooze called?
Scavenging Ooze.
Scavenging Ooze. It's like that, where it's like, oh, I'm going to play this thing that's incidentally going to get huge and also be graveyard hate. Those are my favorite types of like interaction pieces that fill out a deck in a really clean way. Honorable mention as well to Selfless Spirit, which I kind of consider to be, like, I put both of these cards together all the time. If I'm playing one, I'm probably playing the other. There's also, like, because it's similar, it's 2 mana for a 2/1 with flying. You can sacrifice it to give your creatures indestructible until end of turn. I would actually say that, like, Remorseful Cleric is more generally useful. Like, I'm putting Remorseful Cleric into every white deck. If I'm playing a white deck that also has a lot of creatures and also doesn't want those creatures to die or be board wiped by something, I'm probably putting Selfless Spirit in there too. So they usually go together for me. But if I'm picking one of them, it's going to be Remorseful Cleric every time.
Couple of lovely undead just going hand in hand out of the graveyard.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're like husband and husband. I think they're both men. Moving on.
Do ghosts identify?
Maybe. Who knows, man? I don't know how spirits work.
I suppose in timely talking about all the colors, let's talk about one of my favorite auras of all time.
Okay.
And me talking again about like high mana cost cards, like these are tough to get to nowadays because this like Commander is definitely a faster format than it was 10 years ago.
Sped up so much since M15.
I'm a big Enchantress player. Most everybody should know that about me by now. And I've made several iterations of specifically Aura Voltron decks before. And you cannot tell me I cannot dislike Spectra Ward. It was amazing.
Right.
It's been an old school favorite of mine since one of the earliest days I was starting playing the game. And it just has some exquisite raw power behind it, and I'm a huge fan, and I encourage more people to try this as a finisher.
Actually, I remember you pulling this card.
Yeah.
Like, I deeply remember you going like, this card does what?
What I would like to suggest out of this card is that this is your Voltron finisher. So let's go over the card then itself. Spectra Ward is 3 and double white for an enchantment aura. It enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from all colors. This effect does not remove auras. Now,
Super good.
normally, how the game rules work when it comes to a creature gaining protection is that, like, especially auras, right? You don't normally see a lot of protection from a color that is shared within the color of the deck that you're playing, because auras are something that are affected by protection. If a creature of yours just randomly picks up protection from a color of something that has a bunch of other stuff already attached to it, those permanents fall off normally.
Right.
It's a cheeky little workaround that you can do for some of those like lockdown auras that people play, like pacifisms or are unable to scream or witness protection and stuff like that. You give a creature of yours protection from the color that is being enchanted by, and that enchantment falls off normally.
But this protects from it.
Spectra Ward now has that added extra line onto it there, that it not only keeps itself attached to the creature that it is giving protection from all colors for, anything else that has previously been attached to that creature remains on that creature.
Yeah, and this does stop you from playing further auras on it.
Unless,
of course, you're just like reanimating auras, and then they don't target, you know? There's ways to work around it.
That doesn't work. They don't target, but as soon as they would be attached, the protection from colors would make it fall off.
But it says it doesn't remove auras.
The auras that are already attached onto a creature, like you just said, further auras cannot be attached.
I'm going to argue with you on the rules there. I think if you reanimate an aura and get around the targeting and it attaches to it, it would not get removed. I don't know why it would. Because the effect just says it doesn't remove auras.
I'll look up the rule later. I'll look up the rule later and add it to right here on the window.
Who's right? Who's right? Joseph or John?
The point is, though, that anything that has already previously been on that card, you throw Spectra Ward on top of it, and now it gets itself a power and toughness boost. And like what you were talking about earlier with like Surge of Salvation and Mother of Runes, any creature that now has a color in its pip can now no longer block anything that this is attached to. So this is what I would like to suggest, is that like Spectra Ward can be used as your big Voltron finisher. That like when you have a decent stack already put onto your fantastic auras target, throw Spectra Ward right on top of it, and now that thing is going to be near impossible to remove and near impossible to block.
Yes. I don't know why when I think of this card, I want to put it on Geist of Saint Draft. That's like the one card that I'm thinking of, like, man, this would slap on a Geist. The old Ghost of Saint Toast.
I've slipped this friend onto one of my favorite Voltron targets of all time, Cold-Eyed Selkie.
Oh, stupid. I thought you were going to say Aura Gnarlid.
Aura Gnarlid's a very good one too, but no, Cold-Eye Selkie just draws you a card for every damage it deals, so you throw this guy on top of that and just like 5 cards.
So good. Yeah, I love that, man.
It's amazing. It's one of my
that feels like it's a really good card in the decks that won it.
Yep. It's one of my favorite auras of all time, and you should be playing it as your Voltron finisher.
So sick. Well, I'll talk about my last card, which, you guessed it, is a 1-mana card. You and I have very opposite ends of the spectrum on things that we like love playing. This is just me being a little spikier than you are, and this is you being like a little Timmy Johnny, just getting your like big dumb auras in. But the last card I want to talk about is Ephemerate. It's just such a clean card. Ephemerate being a single white pip for an instant that exiles a creature you control and returns it to the battlefield, and then rebounds itself, which rather than it going to your graveyard, when it resolves, it gets exiled and then cast again on your next upkeep. So instant speed for this. I love playing these instant speed single target blink cards, like Cloud Shift or whatever. Like, this is a strictly better Cloud Shift. Cloud Shift obviously just being the initial text without rebound, because this is protection spells for your creatures. We all hate when our commanders get killed and go back to the command zone and everything. Just run Ephemerate. And then if somebody tries to target it with something, you're like playing a white counterspell at base value. Let alone if you have something crazy with an ETB effect that you're like, I'm going to blink this, draw some cards or whatever. And then, like, God forbid you blink a, like, Urian or something, like Yorion, and then get to blink your whole board and then do it again on your upkeep. Like, it's crazy. Doing this twice for a single white mana is broken. This is very, very good.
It does suck on the rebound copy that whatever you blink out, blink in, unless other elements are in play, just loses its ability to attack that turn. But you're probably blinking something degenerate anyway, so who 100%.
Cares? There's always something to blink with an ephemerate unless there's been a board wipe in your world. But again, like, I would challenge you, if you're playing a deck that has white in it and has creatures in it, obviously, and is relatively creature focused with ETB abilities, and you're not playing ephemerate, just swap it in for what you think is the worst card in your deck, and you will find unbelievable uses for it. Like, I just don't feel like I've used every different ability that it has yet. And I play this card a lot, where every time it has something different. Like, it's also like multi-format all-star. Like the scam decks that use the evoke creatures and then ephemerate to blink it. Like, okay, let's play this with a Muldrifter. That's 4 cards. Nope, that's 6 cards. You're gonna evoke it, and then with this evoke trigger on the stack for another mana. So now you're paying 4 mana to evoke a Muldrifter and ephemerate it. You're gonna get the initial 2 cards. It's gonna blink out. You're gonna draw 2 more cards, and then on your upkeep, rebound the Muldrifter again, draw 2 more cards. This is crazy, and that's just with a common. That's with a Muldrifter, which you obviously know I love a Muldrifter, but like. Yeah, that's like off the dome. That's like the value that ephemerate has. So I would say play more ephemerates.
Somebody chalk up that note for when we do next color episode of Joseph talks about Muldrifter for
Mono. It'll be Muldrifter.
Let's hold Spoiler alert. Hold him to that.
I will certainly be talking about Muldrifter in blue.
But no, I agree. Ephemerate is very, very cool if you need to be using these kinds of like white blink things for the assorted of purposes, for protection, for ETB value, for any other shenanigans that you're looking to do, to casting from exile, right?
Definitely.
Rebound does that too. Sometimes that's just a benefit that certain cards want you to be, right? Casting a spell, right? That's Storm. That's casting from exile. That's casting an instant or sorcery, right? Gutter Snipe and friends.
Magecraft. Prowess. All of these things that care about casting instant sorceries, you just get another version of it for free.
For free. Just at your next upkeep. It's so cool. It's very cool.
Big fan.
Hey, do we need a target to hit with this ephemerate?
Yes. Yeah, we do. Tell me about it.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, for my last card for this evening, probably the most scandalous pick on my entire list, and I will refuse to tell you that this card is bad, because it is great. Every time you play it, especially if you blink it on repeat, you can become immortal. You can never die. And it's amazing. Let me talk to you about one of my favorite white flyers of all time. This is Resolute Archangel.
Yeah, dude.
An all-star. Firstly, can you tell John really, really liked M15?
Yeah, John loved M15. John sees 7 mana and he says, "Oh, baby, in my deck."
Get it in there. Oh man, I'm tearing. Okay, I'm good. Whew. Sorry about that, y'all.
We're back.
Resolute Archangel is 5 and double white for a 4/4 angel with flying. That when it enters the battlefield, if your life total is less than your starting life total, it becomes equal to your starting life total.
Sick.
What a turnaround, that by the time you get to this 7 mana to play it, you're already ticked down quite a bit to like 22, 18, 14 life. And then this bad girl comes right down in play, be like,
absolutely.
Oh, sorry, boop, back up to 40 I go.
Yes.
And that's not even unreasonable to get to even earlier, right? Like, this was printed way before Giada was ever a thing, right?
My God, yeah.
If you're doing Giada, Font of Hope, like, you can get this down super fast. I don't know if you'd want to, because
I'm
this is
actually
a
glad that you said that, because like I see
you
7 mana and I'm like, oh, that's a reanimator target, but I don't want this early. You actually
not super
want
early,
this
right?
on turn 7.
You want this as late as possible. This is a kind of, it's a card that's not too dissimilar to some of those other like one-shot effects that like keep you alive after something like, say, would kill you for a turn. The biggest difference with Archangel, though, is that it is just directly sending your life right back up to 40 instead of
Right.
like keeping you stable at like 1 or whatever, like Angel's Grace or something like that. Meaning that it is a permanent down on board. So all those shenanigans that you could do of like start blinking it, start making copies of it, start doing other things that bring it in and out of play constantly, that you can just keep refreshing your life back to 40 with Commander anyway. And you'll never die as long as you can keep Archangel down in play and get it out and in some capacity. You will always reset yourself back to 40. And a very, very niche corner case for something like this that might be relevant for certain decks that you would play as, maybe not, like, because life gain decks probably won't be below their starting life total unless you've been really, really bullied super heavy that game, is the jump from whatever life total you were back to 40 technically is life gain. It doesn't say it on the card, but anything that changes your life total is considered life loss or life gain, depending which direction you go.
Yeah, that is not irrelevant. It will
could
be
come up.
irrelevant a lot of the time, but like the game does track that as life gain for those playing at home. If you've got like a, what is it? Is it Sanguine Blonde or Exquisite Blood? Wow, let me just flub all of those. Yeah.
Yep, Sanguine Bond would be the one that it drains somebody equal to the life you gain. So imagine this scenario: your Orzhov.
Black, white, blink. You just keep going, dude.
Your Orzhov. You're draining yourself down using like greed and necropotence and things like that. And then this Resolute Archangel enters up into your graveyard. Oops, reanimate it. There's a Sanguine Bond.
That's a fun reanimator deck.
That
you get
could
to
be
play
fun.
the Demon Panda.
Yeah.
Wait a second, reanimator that cares about life loss, but then also gaining life.
Sanguine Bond,
Exquisite Blood, yeah,
Bloodthirsty Conqueror, and whatever. You know, it's amazing. It's so cool.
This is fun. Okay, I might brew with this a bit. I now have a brew target.
It's a very cool card. It's one of my favorites of all time, and I highly encourage you to give it a go. Who doesn't love janky life gain shenanigan angels?
That takes us just about to the end of the episode here. If you want to tell us your cards in white that we should be playing, let us know down in the comments below. First and foremost, let us know over on our Discord, which you can join down below, or let us know on Blue Sky, which you can find us at MTG Thoughtcast. John, where can the good people on the internet find you?
I'm specifically at john-thoughtcast.bsky.social.
That's right. You can find me at Joseph-Thoughtcast at bsk at social.bluesky. Blue Sky.
We're learning this. We're 100%. Still learning this.
Yeah. And if you want to make my day, send us an email at mtgthoughtcast@gmail.com. This has been the MTG Thoughtcast. This has been today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.